I hope this video won't come off as negative, but I am also going to throw in a little mini rant about the trope that I absolutely cannot stand in video games: one game for the price of two. But let's get to the good stuff first, because I don't want people to think that I'm a negative asshole who hates everything on the internet. So, I said I was going to make a dedicated video about this, and if I did before, then oh well. I got a lot of shit I need to edit, and probably by the time it gets up there, it probably won't be relevant anymore. RIP. Quite a while ago, actually, the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection was announced, and I'm actually kind of excited. Believe it or not, I actually really like the Mega Man Battle Network games. They're probably the closest thing to Pokemon that I actually really like. It takes the characters from the original Mega Man universe, puts them in a more modernized world, and having essentially Tamagotchis being called pets, and essentially having your own little interactive avatar. The concept of Mega Man, however, is still pretty much the same, and you have a lot of connections between the Mega Man games, and even in some of the other games, having characters from Mega Man X, particularly with Zero, the Colonel, and of course, I figured in this little video, I want to quickly talk about how I feel about two of the games that I played, how I feel about this collection, and then the rant. So Mega Man Battle Network, in case you don't know, is a role-playing game, I guess you want to call it. You move around in an area, in an isometric area and such stuff. You talk to people, you jack into stuff, and there are random-based battles in which you fight viruses, which is actually pretty creative, actually. And each battle is more or less a grid-based 3x3 arena, which is also given to your opponent, and the various viruses you fight consist of course, the Metars, whatever, those fuckers on Mega Man, and of course all the other enemies you fight in the game. And there are a decent number of combinations of enemies that do change up the game quite a bit. There's also the chip system, which when you defeat the viruses in a particular way, or just doing extremely good, you'll be rewarded with a chip, particularly from the enemy that you killed, in which you can then use against the enemies, which is also a concept taken from every Mega Man game ever made, where you defeat an enemy, you get their weapon, and you can use them for yourself. It's a really cool system, and it is in a way a lot like how Mega Man games worked. You also have your standard buster, and you can also upgrade. You can also have the ability to charge your buster to do damage, although it seems to be pretty easy, especially if you have an itchy trigger finger, kind of like what I do, and just mash the fuck out of that fire button, since at least in the first game, you can upgrade your speed and attack power, and you'll cream enemies very quickly. It also makes sense since there's a lot of chips that will do quite a good amount of damage to enemies, but doing this usually makes them stunned, and you get a lot more DPS when you just mash the fire button. There's only one other game I've actually seen that almost replicates this to a T, and that is One Step from Eden. Unfortunately, that game is more or less a roguelike, and not exactly what Mega Man Battle Network is, but considering it at least pertains to the gameplay of it, I will actually have to play it seriously someday. It actually does look pretty good. That, and there is an actual PvP mode that isn't entirely a bitch to set up. Considering it takes elements from Pokemon, trading is highly encouraged. There's a lot of chips in the game, some of which are probably the hardest to get, particularly the Howitzer, which is probably the rarest chip in the entire game. That chip is so fucking hard to find, I don't think I've ever gotten it. And plus, that enemy's an asshole. And it's not even that good of a chip, honestly. Quake 3 is literally better. No, not that one. There you go. Unless it's some secret strategy or a very particular place where you can find chips, because sometimes you can obtain chips besides fighting various viruses, in which are all randomly encountered, which can be a little annoying to getting some of them. But you also have other methods like trading them with NPCs, completing quizzes, or just finding them in random spots, kind of like in Final Fantasy and those other JRPGs that are a hell of a lot better than all the rest, that no one ever was. There's also a multiplayer component which lets you and a friend trade, sometimes just willingly giving chips, or even doing battles, or even battling for chips. And of course, what good RPG is there without post-game content, where even after you beat the game, you have access to, well, the post-game, where you can pretty much do whatever and just get even more chips, accessing areas you can only acquire after beating the game, and other such fun stuff. It really is cool, honestly, and I wish that this would be more common in other games that aren't just RPGs. There might be out there, but at least with newer games, I'm not exactly up to speed. It does kind of suck that there's only been one traditional Mega Man game in the vein of Battle Network, and it's on the GameCube, and it's super expensive. Better whip out the Action Replay and Swiss, because there's no way in fuck I'm doing that. I don't care if you call me a fucking filthy pirate. I am not gonna fucking spend half a fucking mortgage, a land, and a fucking car from the 60s just to play one game where I can spend, like, not even a fraction of that and play pretty much everything else. I'm sorry. Flashcards are the future. All in all, Mega Man Battle Network is a very interesting game all around. If you haven't played it, I highly encourage you to do it. The main problem with these games is that they were Game Boy Advance exclusive for quite some time. And starting with Mega Man Battle Network 3, they did the Pokemon bullshit where they would release 2 versions of the game with their own exclusive content and exclusive chips and other such stuff I don't care about. But before we get into that topic, let me go ahead and talk about the other side of the coin, and that is the Mega Man Legacy Collection that features Mega Man Battle Network from the Mega Man Battle Network series. First of all, when this was announced, I was not expecting this at all. Honestly, this is a really cool way of bringing back a beloved series that was pretty much only on the Game Boy Advance. Assuming the online is actually good, I might probably get this on the Switch just for the sake of actually playing it on the go as it should be. That is, unless the game actually has proper split screen, like with something along the lines of, I can't believe I'm going to say this, Sonic Drift on the Game Gear via the collections that had it, where you had a second screen on hand and you could kind of do split screen that way. However, this collection is coming out next year, which is kind of a shame. And kind of like with all the other games, they are going to have 2 versions of this, which is a little lame. It is also not even including Chip Battle, which is a spin-off of Mega Man Battle Network, and I don't even know people liked it. I didn't play it myself, but it's kind of a lame exclusion despite it being part of the game. It also doesn't look like that there's going to be that Nintendo DS remaster, which actually did have one cart, but 2 games included. It's kind of like what Metal Walker did, except you can at least have 2 different save slots, which will give that over Metal Walker. But seriously, Capcom, for the love of God, please fucking bring back Metal Walker. You clearly referenced this in Street Fighter. The character exists, goddammit. But yeah, you also have the other features like Art Gallery, Music Player, which I guess is a lot better than what Advance Wars used to offer. Seriously, how many times do you ever go on YouTube or even Zolfar and you have someone who ripped the sound effects but having that same ding noise? There's also a high resolution filter, which seems a little weird, but it's if it's gonna be the smoothness, I'll just play without the filter. If I'm playing an old ass indie or pixel game, I don't need no damn filters. It's ugly in Doom and it's ugly in games that have pixels. And it also looks like it's not coming out on Xbox One, which is a little annoying, because why does these games always get the short end of the stick? BlazBlue always gets the short end of the stick. Guilty Gear always gets the short end of the stick. You do have some really cool renders for enemies, like the Sword Dude, who's actually pretty cool. He's essentially the real Meta Knight. But yeah, it's Capcom is unfortunately going to be doing the same bullshit that they did with Mega Man and Mega Man X Legacy Collections by having 2 different volumes. Which is actually ironic considering that Mega Man Battle Network has always been doing this shit ever since Mega Man Battle Network 3. It really makes no sense. Mega Man 0 and ZX Collection did not do this. I'd be pretty disappointed if they did that for that game, but because the Mega Man ZX games are there, they probably didn't bother, but you're at least paying for 1 game instead of 2. So, let's get into the main meat and potatoes of this rant. And I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for this, but it's also gonna be a low-key rant about Pokemon and why I consider it pretty overrated. Now, before I begin, okay, but is this a ripoff of Meta Knight? He must be sus. Actually, wait. Actually, no, wait. No.